£500 million a year will help keep families together. No wonder the Deputy Prime Minister is sitting so quietly by his side, because on this one, Nick agrees with me. We don't need it. It won't work. They should drop it.
I'm afraid the right honourable lady has a slightly short memory, because when she was sitting over here, an enormous recognition of marriage in the tax system was introduced by the Labour government in, wait for it, inheritance tax. They said, yes, they massively increased the threshold for inheritance tax, which can be transferred between husband and wife. Well, if recognising marriage in the tax system is such a good thing for the better off, why don't we do it for the less well off? Sir Alan Beith.
Order. I know the House wishes to hear Sir Alan Beith.
Mr. Speaker, can I associate my right honourable friends with the tributes the Prime Minister has paid to those who lost their lives in Afghanistan and those who lost their lives in the dreadful events in Cumbria? Can I ask the Prime Minister what means he hopes to use to achieve his stated and very necessary objective of allowing the private sector to expand in those parts of the country like the North East, which are heavily dependent on public sector jobs?
Well, the honourable gentleman raises an extremely important issue, because we are going to have to take difficult decisions about public spending, and everybody knows that. Let me be clear, no region of the country should be singled out, but he's right to say that some parts of the country have a very high dependence on public sector jobs. What we need to do in the budget that will come forward on the 22nd of June is to bring forward ideas that will fire up the private sector. For instance, the idea that any new firm established doesn't have to pay national insurance on the first 10 employees. I think that will help. But he's right, we should also be looking at ways that as we get the private sector growing, as we make difficult decisions in the public sector, how do we help those regions that could be adversely affected? This is something the government is looking at seriously, because we want to take the whole country with us as we deal with the £160 billion deficit bequeathed to us by the other side.
Chris Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wholeheartedly support what the Prime Minister said earlier about our armed forces, not least because a lot of young men and women from the Rhondda and from the other South Wales valleys are serving in Afghanistan and elsewhere at the moment. He will know that one of the most important things to protect our armed forces is to make sure that they have the best training, technically and in military expertise, that is possible. Will he, therefore, commit himself and his government unambiguously today to the new Defence Training College in St Athan in South Wales, which would save lives in our armed forces and provide 5,000 jobs in South Wales?
I'm grateful for the honourable gentleman's question. I mean, everyone who has spent time in South Wales and spent time with the military know that there is an incredibly strong case for the St Athan Defence Training Establishment. I've heard that case on all the visits that I have made. But he will understand that we have got to have a proper strategic defence review. We haven't had one since 1998, and everything has to be included in that review. But I would just say this to him. If he feels so strongly about this, and given that he was in the last government, there was the opportunity to give that project the go-ahead before the election, and they didn't do it.
Mr. Adam Holloway.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now that we know that the last government spent £1 billion on advertising and invested £12,000 on golf balls, is the Prime Minister surprised that there's no money left?
Well, we're not really surprised, not least because of the letter we got from the former Chief Secretary. I'm glad to see that he's apologised about the letter, but he hasn't yet apologised for the legacy. My honourable friend makes a good point. In addition, I can say we've discovered £320 million being spent on hotels, £1.5 billion on consultants, and one which, I have to say, did really amaze me. One department spent over £140 per person on cut flowers and pot plants. Perhaps we can have a lottery to find out which one.
Jim Dobbin.
Mr. Speaker, 4 high schools across my constituency are in the very last throes of the Building Schools for the Future programme. Matthew Moss High School in Castleton, Cyril Moore Sports College and Holy Family, a new joint faith school, and of course Middleton Technology College in Middleton. Can the Prime Minister guarantee that this programme will be seen through to its completion, which would also help many of the construction workers in my constituency.
I'm grateful for the honourable gentleman's question. I know that he will be pleased to see that in making the £6 billion reductions in year that we made, and many warnings were made about what that would mean, we have actually protected the schools' budget and made sure that schools and Sure Start are protected. In terms of building schools for the future, let me be clear, our plans and our passion when it comes to education is to make sure that new schools are provided, to make sure we have real excellence in the secondary sector in particular. That's what it's about. Building schools for the future is exactly what our plans involve.
Karen Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister aware of the case of my constituent, Mr Edmund Arapi, who is facing extradition to Italy, having been tried in his absence? And will he look into the matter urgently and accelerate the review of extradition cases before Mr Arapi is taken from his family and sent to an Italian jail?
Well, I'm very happy to look at this case, and I will discuss it with my right honourable friend, the Home Secretary, who is bringing forward work on the whole issue of deportations. There are clearly legal processes that have to be followed, but I'll discuss it with my right honourable friend and perhaps then get in contact with the honourable member.
Mr Ronnie Campbell.
Now that the banks are coming into profit, some of them anyway, and the taxpayers now getting a little bit return on the money that they put in, the enormous amount of money that they put in, when does the Prime Minister envisage selling the shares off to his friends in the city?
Yeah. I would much rather sell the shares in the banks to the honourable gentleman's constituents. I believe in popular capitalism, and I think there might be an opportunity to do that. Clearly, there will be important decisions to make in terms of making sure, on the one hand, we get the maximum amount of money back for the taxpayer who's had to put so much money into the banks. On the other hand, we want a fully competitive banking system that serves business in this country so they don't get ripped off by the banks. And at the same time, yes, I think privatising those banks back in the private sector where they belong can help encourage popular capitalism once again.
Nadeem Zahawi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the Prime Minister join me in congratulating Dennis Short of Stratford-on-Avon for his nomination as Entrepreneur of the Year for Ernst & Young, a well-earned accolade, Prime Minister. Thinking about earnings, was the Prime Minister surprised that so many people in the public sector earn more than he does?
I join my honourable friend congratulating the gentleman he refers to. On the issue of transparency on pay, I think this is an important principle. It's good for democracy, it's good for accountability to see how much people in the public sector are earning, and I also think it will help us to control public spending. When people see how much people are paid in the public sector, the pressure will be on to keep top pay levels down. And while saying that, I think it would be worthwhile, and we are holding a review to get this done, to have a maximum multiple of 20 times earnings. You shouldn't have people at the top of a public sector organisation earning more than 20 times than people at the bottom. And it's going to be that sort of progressive idea that we're looking forward to putting forward on this side of the House.
Yeah. Tony Perkins.
Does the Prime Minister share the concerns of two school teachers from Chesterfield who came to see me this weekend, that children from areas that have got greater deprivation are going to suffer disproportionately from the 10,000 university places he plans to cut?
Yeah. Well, first of all, can I welcome the honourable gentleman to his place as Member of Parliament for Chesterfield. We can all remember one of his predecessors, Tony Benn, who sat for that seat and left this House saying he wanted to spend more time doing politics. What I would say to the honourable gentleman is that we want to help children from less well-off backgrounds by having a pupil premium. And we're going to take money from outside the education budget to make sure the pupil premium is well funded, so actually children from the poorest homes get to go to the best schools and the money follows the pupil into those schools. In terms of university places, let me say this to him. We are expanding the number of university places by £10,000 compared with by 10,000 in number compared with the legacy that we were left.
Yeah. Mr. Peter Bone.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Could I press the Prime Minister a little further on excessive pay? My constituents are outraged at the amount of money some senior managers of the NHS are receiving. What can the Coalition do to reduce this excessive expenditure?
I think my honourable friend makes a very good point. The first thing is by having transparency, for the first time, we're able to see who is earning what in the public sector, and I think that will actually cause pressure on top people's pay in the public sector to keep that pay level down. That's the first thing. But in the NHS specifically, as he knows, our plans are all about removing